Get back into the chemtrails, Griffin. You've talked about this. I mean, what's your breakdown of the level of the explosive awakening we're seeing? And the globalists are openly saying they want to start censoring the web now.
Well, I think you've pretty well covered it. It is explosive. It's exponential. And on this issue of geo-engineering or chemtrails, whatever you want to call it, it was already such of massive proportions that I didn't realize it. I thought, from my personal experience, that we'd have a hard row to hoe there in the beginning, getting people interested in it. And I think, as I mentioned before, when I put it up on our little website, which doesn't have anywhere near the exposure as yours, and said, well, we're interested in doing a video. Anybody want to help us? Why, we were inundated with responses, immediate responses. I mean, within 2 days, we had this whole thing done from all over the world. People were, contacting us from all of the, basically, the NATO countries where they have all the spraying going on. So, yeah, it started off with such an explosion that I couldn't believe it, and it's gotten even more so. I got a phone call just before the show here from a fellow in Toronto. There's a bookstore there. He says, we want to do a screening. Is that okay? I said, okay, of course it's okay. We're delighted. And so people are just volunteering to do the kinds of things that in the past we used to have to promote, We'd have to go out and say, will you do this and will you do that? And we want to promote this. And now they're coming to us and saying, how can we help? So we've really touched a nerve here. And I think you're right, Alex. If you want to go on the road or put something to show just for the media purposes, just show the massiveness of this movement, I think it probably would work out exactly as you said.
It's incredible. We're going to come back and get into human experimentation, just to show, they don't care if aluminum hurts you. They don't care. This is part of their larger plan. They call it killing more than two birds with one stone. Don't forget, we're making this search term #1 today, you the listeners, and it is huge explosions. That will lead them to the new videos released by NIST of firefighters saying bombs in the buildings. Here's the headline from prisonplanet.com. Obama administration pressures ISP to censor websites because they haven't been able to pass their Cybersecurity Act where everything's wired through the federal government. It's already wired. They just want to be able to officially do it. We've got this article from Mainstream News, is what Paul Watson sources, and they say, we want to just be able, and in fact, you saw Lieberman say this last year, he wants his office to be able to tell YouTube when to take something down. There's no judge, there's no jury, there's no free speech. Everything's censored by Herr Lieberman. And, that's the scary thing here, G. Edward Griffin, before we get back into chemtrails in your new film, is that we are exponentially growing. We're going to win. We can see the end of the finish line. We're actually ahead of the globalists. They're trying to come out in the open, intimidate us, tell us to shut up, make us think that they're invincible. The Borg can't be stopped. You will be assimilated, and resistance is futile. But they are really putting up trial balloons and promoting it in Europe as well to really start censoring people.
Well, there's no question about that. They've been talking about that for decades, haven't they? I remember when the Internet first became a reality, a lot of my friends, some of whom are pretty well known, would say, don't worry about it. We've won because they can't censor the Internet. It's just physically impossible. I said, are you kidding? They can do whatever they want. These guys run the governments of the world, and they have the police power. They can intervene in some way. Oh, no, you're wrong, Ed. The Internet is different. Well, anyway, we've seen it all change, and now, they've got the technology. They can throw the switches. They can pass the laws and make anybody that doesn't comply guilty of some kind of a heinous crime, and away they go. But that's the bad side. The good side is that the movement of awareness that we're discussing is growing in exponential fashion. And there comes a point, I don't know where it is, but there's a tipping point where they just can't get away with it anymore without some kind of massive negative reaction that shows up in the political arena. That's why they're planning to, I think they're planning to have some kind of a major crisis event so as to distract from all that and regain that momentum in favor of let's have more security, let's have more police action here to protect us from this dreaded enemy. It could be a terrorist attack, it could be a biological attack. God only knows what they might dream up.
Global warming, global economic collapse, global poverty, they've always got a solution. Give the central banking families and the royalty the power to set up a private world government that sets all the rules and levies taxes.
Yeah, and that's all for our good, you see. And just like this global warming theme, but they're not doing that to control the population or to make money or increase their political power. They're doing it for us. They're doing it to save our planet, to improve crops and all of that nonsense that they dream up. And unfortunately, many people believe it because they want to believe it, you know? They're in love with authority.
They're in love with licking boots. I guess they don't feel good about themselves. Briefly, before we go to break and get back into the chemtrails and human experimentation and your discoveries on aluminum and the patents and all the rest of it with this aerosol program that's now starting to come out of the shadows into the open because we've been exposing it. But briefly, dealing with 9/11, we've seen all these new terror alerts ahead of the election. Are you concerned about false flag events?
I'm very concerned about that, Alex, because, you know, anybody that's been following this movement for any amount of time knows that that's one of the most powerful cards they have up their sleeve. When you know, it used to be that when totalitarian leaders were getting in trouble and losing support at home, they would start a war. That was the traditional time-tested method of bringing the population back under the control of the ruler. But now it's a little refinement on that. It's not just a war, but it's a war that's triggered by some kind of a false flag event, so that the people are angry. They think, we've been attacked, we've been injured, you know, we've been insulted. We can't stand by and just let this happen. Now let us get behind our glorious leader and fight back.
His name is G. Edward Griffin. He is the producer of What in the World Are They Spraying? It starts shipping on or right after October 22nd. Get your copies first at Infowars.com. Powerful film. Stay with us. Okay, for the next 45 minutes or so, I need to do the last segment on a news blitz because there's just so much I haven't gotten to, but this is a big issue. A secret country, it's in all the NATO countries. It isn't in other countries that aren't NATO controlled, we've noticed. The Anglo-American establishment nations, huge aerosol spraying weather modification program, but that's only one part of it. And now they're coming out with more and more of it. In fact, did you guys find Aaron's big blue folder with all the documentation? Well, let's call him and get him up here. I know he worked till about midnight last night because I meant to have that today. I'll have to run back and get in his file cabinets during the break because I want to show you just some of the patents and the admissions. We'll also take a few calls before they leave us on chemtrails specifically, 1-800-259-9231. But Michael J. Murphy, again, is a journalist and filmmaker, and he's produced this film, What in the World Are They Spraying?, available at Infowars.com with G. Edward Griffin. Michael, tell us about as much of the film, and I've seen it, it's excellent, as much of the film as you want to give away, and really the big discovery here that, well, about old Monsanto. They're rearing their ugly head again, aren't they?
That's right, with the GMO seed. But Paul Winterberger, as well, is involved with the film. We brought him onto the project, and he did a great job. But essentially, our investigation into these programs started at the American Association for the Advancement of Science conference, where geoengineers proposed spraying 10 to 20 million tons of toxic aluminum into the sky for what they call was the stated goal to cool the planet. So after that meeting, when they're coming out publicly addressing this issue and essentially selling it to the public in denial that these programs have been already implemented, but what they're saying is that they're looking at these. However, we went around literally over to Europe, over to several different states here in America, and we researched tests which revealed extremely high levels of aluminum, barium, strontium, the areas where they've been finding these tests in the rain, snow, and soil. They've also been finding major declines in the forest and in the crops that are producing, because as the scientists that we spoke to, aluminum, barium, and strontium will increase the pH of soil. So, for instance, in Northern California, they have seen at a bare minimum 10 times the increase in the alkalinity in their soils. And the scientists up there believe that this is a direct result of the spraying of aluminum, barium, and strontium. What a lot of people believe these programs are in part, obviously it's a multi-agenda operation, but they believe, speaking about this new GMO seed, that it could be an attempt to kill off anything that's natural and organic, because there is a new GMO aluminum-resistant seed that has been manufactured that will thrive in a high aluminum soil.
Oh, don't worry. You know, all these major croplands have been poisoned and normal natural plants won't grow in it. But Monsanto's got a whole new seed line, corn, wheat, whatever it is, canola, soybeans. It's all being developed. It's all being patented. We've got stuff that'll grow when nothing else will. Oh, you notice your trees all over central Texas are dying. Oh, on the California coast they're dying. And arborists and plant experts are testing it and saying it's aluminum, and they're dying in Hawaii. But don't worry, Monsanto's not just developing major food crops now. They're coming out with GMO palm trees. They're going to come out with the tea tree oil. They've got it all for you. Isn't that sweet of them?
Very true, and that's a concern for many of us. And we also filmed for a week on a remote part of the island in Maui, Hawaii, and I know that you saw the film, Alex, but for a week, Paul and I stayed on this little organic farm, and we ate off of the land. You know, we'd go out and pick our lunch literally off of the trees and make food. And a growing concern on that part of the island is, you know, I really admire the way that people there live, because they were free. They didn't have to exchange money to eat.
Oh, well, S510 would end that, because you're not allowed to even grow and eat your own food under that.
And that's just one part of it. Yeah, and that's very scary to many of us who are aware of that. But they're concerned that not only with the new legislation, this might be an attempt just to kill off anything that's on their land. And, you know, I couldn't help but to look forward and say, what is this going to be like in 10 years? Are the people that live here going to have to go to a corporation for a corporate seed? And what are the requirements for that? Will they have to get licensed? Will they have to pass certain exams? What will be the taxes on
And we
that?
know
And
the
that's
honeybees are dying all over the Western world and NATO countries mainly. We know that a lot of crops are having trouble. You guys interviewed scientists and others who would go into streams and, you know, talk about how just 10 years ago it was full of, you know, all sorts of life, but now it's dead. And what do they find? Loving aluminum.
Yes, in major quantities. And, you know, I'd like to bring to light a test which was taken on Mount Shasta. And as a baseline, about 7 years ago, they took a snow test, and it revealed 7 parts per billion aluminum, also barium and strontium at much lower levels. However, 1 year ago, Francis Mangels, who is a retired USDA biologist, took another test. And I just want to throw this out there. How high do you think that test was after...
it was 60 parts per billion, or 60 times the safe level.
60,000, I think. I already gave that away, Michael, in a previous
Excuse me, it wasn't 60? It was give us those numbers.
It was 61,100 parts per billion.
Oh, excuse me. So it was just, how many times over the safe level is that?
That's over 61 times the safe level established for drinking water. And people are climbing that mountain, and they're using the snow to hydrate.
And by the way, you have a clip in the film of a local newscast in Washington State with the guy going, look, I was in the military. This is some kind of military spraying of aluminum here, not just you know, chaff, more than that. And there you have the newscast in the very area where you're finding the aluminum in high levels, and you've got the newscaster saying, look at this. This is not a natural weather system.
Exactly. And there are literally, this has been on the corporate mainstream media, just not at the level of attention that we believe that it deserves. It's been covered a little bit here, a little bit there. But, you know, something so damaging. I mean, aluminum is so toxic to ecosystems, but also we interviewed a lot of physicians and healthcare professionals, and they said aluminum is extremely toxic to human health. And we've seen, in a 10-year period in L.A. County, we've seen over a 200% increase in Alzheimer's, and at the same time, worldwide, we're seeing an incredible increase in aluminum-related illness.
Well, we're now seeing early onset and even youth, people 25, 30, getting Alzheimer-like symptoms. And then we've had top brain scientists on, like Dr. Blaylock, Russell Blaylock, and they're just seeing it across the board, not just the tin cans we're drinking out of that are coated in bisphenol A that's bad enough. I mean, this is incredible.